Our next session, in many ways, is the topic du jour. It is an umbrella term used to describe a myriad of technologies. Perhaps it's your key priority for the year ahead, or cynically, it's all just a meaningless buzzword. You can take your pick. We are, of course, talking about artificial intelligence. This session is entitled Machine Intelligence Risk versus Reward. I think the third pillar of that I think personally is very interesting is the need for transparent, professional, open technology ecosystems, not least when you're looking at some of the suppliers at the moment and some of the issues they've had over the last 12 to 18 months. Kind of more broadly, when we look at AI at the moment, it is a massive bubble, isn't it, that seems to be developing. There's no end in sight in many ways. Where does it all end, do you think, in the short, medium and long-term horizon?
I focus on basically the intersection between IP and new technologies, so the way that new technologies affect exploitation and monetization. And so unsurprisingly, for the last couple of years, AI has been a huge topic. I think in terms of, well, where we end up in the short, medium and long term, I think in the short term, just in the last sort of, just thinking about the last 18 months since sort of ChatGPT burst on the scene and everyone started thinking, wow, AI. I think, now increasingly businesses, clients across all different kinds of sectors are adopting AI. At the moment, I think the most prevalent use case is still sort of generating internal operational efficiencies, but increasingly people are using it for sort of external facing use cases like, things like personalization, recommendations, enhancing a customer experience is a major use case. I do a lot of work in creative media industries and their asset generation and how to improve efficiency there while navigating some IP risk is also a big consideration. Software coding is another big one. And I think we're sort of seeing people move away from kind of initial sort of fright and reluctance to embrace AI because of the various risks it poses, and more towards, building guardrails and sustainable AI policies, and trying to harness the opportunity, and the sense kind of being the risk of not using AI is greater ultimately than the risks of using it and maybe sort of small things going wrong. I think in the medium to long term, personally, I don't think AI is a bubble.
It's definitely not a bubble, and it is definitely here. And I love the blockchain analogy because it's definitely not blockchain. What's amazed me, this is moving into areas that we didn't expect it to move into. I saw yesterday an AI that is used essentially as an interface engine with a taxonomy and an ontology, and it is essentially solving a data problem of a company's poorly structured data. Now, what that has actually done is it's taken away the excuse from the IT team that said, oh, we can't deal with this because our data's in a mess. The AI is marking the AI's homework to make sure their data is not in a mess. So I think we do have to recognize it's here, it's changing the way we work, and it will change the way we need to think about the way we do technology. We'll need to work with governance and structure and policy and guide rails way earlier in the cycle, because we don't understand what's going on and the landscape is changing and regulation is moving. And if you are a global business, it's incredibly difficult. I mean, if you just operate in the US, there are 55 probably different types of legislation. There's every state, and then there's probably 4 or 5 others that have an opinion. So this is moving at a real pace, but it is real.
Kate, how do you see things at the FT, the kind of use cases? And I think Gen AI in particular, there's some quite interesting things in terms of externally, but longer term internally as well.
Yeah, that's right. So obviously the FT being a news publisher is part of a sector that finds itself very much at the center of some of these conversations in terms of having, on the one hand, IP to protect. So a lot of these LLMs consume the information and the news that we produce as part of their own product. But also, as a news publisher, how we can use this new technology or evolved technology to create our own product from our own content and thinking about new forms of monetization through product. So one of the use cases we have, or two of the use cases we have at the moment, firstly, we have already in beta release a product for our professional audience that allows them to effectively query our repository of news and create summaries with citations back to our articles to enable a broader set of use cases amongst that audience. And we're really testing to see how that is taken up and how that's used and the sorts of questions that are asked through that new service, which is really interesting. And then we have all of the classic productivity use cases that everyone in the room has, but we have specific use cases around newsroom productivity. So in particular, helping our journalists find news articles that otherwise wouldn't be found. So enabling them to search through vast repositories of unstructured data, documents that are often hard to find. You might imagine the sort of content that they deal with, and really helping them do that at scale in a way that was just never possible before. So that's a really interesting use case that we're just exploring at the moment.
ChatGPT is the poster child of the AI umbrella or the blanket. And what it's become is the Wikipedia of AI, where everybody, new and old, of generations that use technology move towards ChatGPT. And the reason why Wikipedia was so successful is it provided sources and citations to validate where it's coming from. One of the biggest challenges with AI at the moment is the notion of hallucination, where it comes up with its own answers. And the solve for that is citation. Whenever it provides an answer, just like Kate was talking about with FT, you give it its sources to tell you where you are. In the publication world, if you're not one of those licensed sources, you might be pushed to the side, because every time someone in the public eye uses a tool like ChatGPT, they're directed towards the licensed tools and sources and not the unlicensed ones. And so from a risk-reward perspective, yes, the IP is a challenge part, but here is a potential of an untapped audience that is now coming to you as a source because of the tools that they're using, like ChatGPT and other AI tools.
AI tools that are going to be used to make decisions or draw conclusions or generate output are going to amplify and propagate any bias that stems from both the data and the data scientists. And one of the ways around that is to ensure that you have your data scientists are a diverse group, that they can truly reflect the society that they are going on to represent. But that is not the case at the moment. We are still in a world where globally only 22% of the data scientists are women. Nationally, it drops to 20, which is pretty appalling, and it's set to get worse. I highlight gender here, but that's because I think gender can be used as a Trojan horse to improve inclusivity in many dimensions.
I hear people talk about hallucination and bias a lot. I don't hear people talk as much about human in the loop, because if the human in the loop does not reflect the diversity, does not reflect the ethnicity, doesn't reflect that, you just get a human in the loop reinforcing the current stereotypes. And it's a big, big challenge for us.
Regulation, I guess, we're seeing that landscape evolve very quickly. The EU AI Act's coming in.
It is a really big challenge how to implement AI in a business in a compliant way. Obviously, businesses are international. Actually, it's about working with the whole business, so including commercial teams, product teams, actually understanding, sort of getting their trust and being seen kind of as an enabler of what AI use cases they actually are thinking about for the next few years, and sort of putting it in terms of, we want to enable this to happen, but in order to do that, we kind of need the lead time. You need to tell us what you want to do, to the extent that's, obviously things come up last minute, but to the extent that's possible. And then we can start as kind of legal and compliance teams thinking about what is the best framework to comply internationally. It might be that something like the EU's AI Act ends up being kind of the high watermark, and complying with that kind of more or less gets you there with everything else. And then you might just do sort of smaller tweaks for different locales.
Very, very quickly, your final kind of top tip, what do you leave for the audience today as you are?
To get sort of buy-in from all different parts of the business, and get people talking and contributing what it is they want to do. Legal risks around use of AI, but just actually for each use case, thinking about it individually, and actually what's the materiality of it to your business, and what practical risks does it pose, and then judging from there what guardrails you put around that use case.
Embrace AI. It's going to have a significant impact on the labour force. It will automate some jobs, so some jobs will come down and some jobs will be created. There will be jobs created that we can't even conceive of now.
Get comfortable with new ways of working, more inclusive, more iterative, learn as you go.
Making sure that you keep your and your board's really keen focus on the why and the objectives of the use of this technology beyond productivity gains, and making sure the ROI is there. And on the risk side, I'm Chief Data Officer, so it'd be remiss of me not to say, make sure you've got your data right. The foundations are there to enable it.
Her second point was going to be my first point. The foundation of your data and your unstructured content is absolutely imperative. If you don't know where your content is, how is an AI supposed to know? So make sure that the groundwork is done before you start introducing AI models into it.
Thanks everyone for joining me.